Hey everyone, on today's podcast, we speak with the incredible Lauren Fisher. She is a 7-time CrossFit Games athlete, placing as high as 9th back in 2014. She's also placed 3rd place back in 2019 with her team Invictus. She also has quite a bit of experience competing for Team USA in the USA weightlifting world, being junior national champion back in 2014. This podcast was really interesting, and I think both Chad and I learned quite a bit about Lauren and her background, coming from such a fit family, being surrounded by brothers who have all gone on to really high-level athletic careers, and also that 2020 is going to be a huge year for her. She's on her way to getting married to Rasmus, her fiance, who's another incredible athlete. She also has recently founded her new company, Grow Strong. We go into some really interesting topics, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. All right, welcome back to another podcast. Lauren Fisher. Lauren, how are you?
Doing great. I'm excited to be on your podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. I know we're just talking about it a little bit off the air about how crazy all of our schedules are, traveling all over the world. You just got back from Barcelona and are on your way to a bunch of other competitions. So we know that it's crazy. The athlete life is not one that's sedentary for sure. But we appreciate you taking the time and being with both Chad and I.
Thank you.
So my first thought about when Chad recommended getting you on the podcast and we were really hopeful, it just brought me back to the last time we were hanging out. And that was at Power Monkey Camp 12 back in the fall. And it was your first time at camp, and you and Rasmus both came out, and I hope you guys had a good time. But there was one portion of the week that was very memorable for probably you, but I think mostly for a lot of other people as well. And it was your participation in our blob. Do you remember how that went?
Never again. I think that'll be the last time I ever do the blob, like if I go to another Power Monkey camp. I was not peer pressured. Like, I obviously wanted to do it. So the first time, everyone was like, 2 people, let's get the 2 heaviest people for Lauren. And I'm like a 135-pound female, and I was like, no, I'm going to do one person. So I did one person jumped on the blob, and I flew in the air, and it was fine. And then everyone was like, Lauren, go again. Like, let's get 2 heavy people. So I almost got peer pressured into it. So 2 of the heaviest guys, I knew right when I was sitting on the blob, like my heart was racing, like the adrenaline was going. I was like, something's going to go bad. And literally the guys went down on the blob, and I flew into the air, and I guess I just lost all control of myself. And I completely face planted. And Ritual got it on picture, and we got on video, the drone shots, everything. So that went viral.
Yeah, I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to overlay the video of you flying through the air while we're talking about this. But for those of you who don't know what the blob is at our Power Monkey camp. We have this huge lake, and by the lake there's this huge inflatable tube, and we have someone sit out the edge of the tube, and we have like a 20-foot platform, whereas Lauren was describing, we have 2 of the largest guys. So normally it's Ron Ortiz and whoever the biggest other guy is at camp. So Ron is our like mandatory launcher of the blob. So Ron is like 6'5", just massive dude, and we normally have another guy around his size just launching somebody like Lauren's size, 135 pounds, 40, 50 feet up into the air. And Lauren was a trooper, man. This video is just epic. She had one of the largest launches we've ever seen. And when you came down in the water, you were a little out of it, right? You weren't quite ready for that impact. It was a little bit disorienting. We always have like people out there on, paddle boards and making sure people get out there safe. But I remember you coming out of the water and being like, what just happened? I blacked out.
I think everyone was quiet after my fall. Like, when I got out of the water, like, no one was like laughing or anything. But then obviously it's funny to look back at it.
Yeah, fortunately, you can look back and say, okay, that was fun, and I'm never doing it again. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks for being a trooper, being at camp, and doing that, and creating a moment that I think everybody that was at PMC 12 will remember for the rest of their time.
I'm sure they're definitely going to be talking about that at the next camp, and for a while.
Well, people have a lot to live up to now doing the blob. We have to say, let's see if you can go a little bit higher than Lauren did the previous time. So whoever our guests are for next camp, they have something to shoot for.
Exactly.
Yeah, Dave, we definitely, in some kind of way, got to get that clip added to the YouTube version of this recording here. But, Lauren, one of the things that worried me about what you said was if you come back to camp, man, we surely hope you come back. We had a good time hanging out with you and working with you through the week.
Yeah, I had a blast. I know Rasmus and I, like, just being around, like, there were so many great coaches all in one place, and all the athletes, like, everything was so well run from, like, the morning to the night. And there were just so many fun activities. Like, Rasmus and I definitely will be back.
Perfect.
Awesome. All the activities for sure. Now, you
Yeah.
mentioned just before the recording here a couple competitions that you were training for, and I was excited to hear you say as well that you're trying to go back to the games. You're trying to qualify for the games once again. As mentioned in the intro, 7-time CrossFit Games athlete, and you're trying to go back. What has kept you training and striving to go back to the games, even still after all these years?
I think it's just the passion. Like, I love what I do, and like, I can't imagine anything differently. I was just thinking that this morning. I'm like, how do I just keep coming back every single day? Like, I've now been to the CrossFit Games 7 times, going on my 8th CrossFit Games. And like, I can't imagine my life any differently, like achieving towards a goal. And like, the CrossFit Games every season is like one goal I'm constantly working towards. And like, it's almost like puts my daily life into a schedule. Like, I know I'm going into the morning to train, going in the afternoon to train, I'm eating healthy. Like, everything is built around this one goal, and I might as well enjoy it, because I'm not going to be this fit forever. Like, I'm
Yeah.
26 now, and I know, like, 10 years from now, who knows, like, have a family and everything. So it's
Mhm.
just enjoying it while I can.
For sure, yeah, it's almost like you don't know any better, right? If when it comes to the point in your life where you don't have that to really train for, and I know that Dave and myself have gone through that a little bit as well, where we're not training at as high of a level. Um, I can definitely think back on those times where I was and had no idea what I would do with my day at that point if I weren't training, 9 times a week. But as a high level athlete, I very regularly get kind of the same couple questions over and over again about the Olympic experience and stuff like that. Are there any common questions or even misconceptions that you run into about being a games level competitor?
I guess one of the biggest misconceptions is like, people think, oh, she goes to the CrossFit Games, she must just train all day. But I think a lot of people get that wrong. I know there are a lot of CrossFit Games athletes with families, or they're working part-time jobs. Like, they have other hobbies outside of just training for the CrossFit Games. And so I've been fortunate enough. I graduated from San Diego State in 2017, and now I've been able to train full-time. But I also have my own business. This year I'm planning for a wedding. I have a relationship. I have a family. Like, there's other things I care about outside of training. So, like, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions for most games athletes, is like, they think their whole life revolves just around training CrossFit.
Yeah, and being that you said that, I feel like a certain level of those things, when you don't have those things and you're only training all the time and you're only focused on that and that's your only priority, it kind of makes it harder. I feel like having those things that you just listed off in your life, for me anyway, it took a little bit of the pressure off, and it upped um, my training and my skill and my ability to compete to another level. Have you found that to be true for yourself as well?
That is 100% true. I feel like if I'm fully focused towards just CrossFit, eating a strict diet, not having anything outside of that life, like, I wouldn't be able to sustain it. And that's why I have balance. Like, I know on Saturdays, Rasmus and I might go out to a nice dinner and enjoy ourselves, and not worrying about like weighing or measuring my food. Going surfing, or like doing normal things that other girls do, like getting my nails done. Like, I have a normal life, and I think that's sustainable. And I think if you have to eat like constantly following a strict diet 100% of the time, you're not going to be able to last in this sport. Like, you have to have balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of a reoccurring theme from any high level athletes that we come across, and of course we've come across a lot being high level athletes ourselves. We know a lot of them, and we're good friends with a lot of them. So it's definitely something to take note of for really anyone out there that's in the CrossFit community, or trying to compete at any level in any sport, is to find that balance for sure. Now, Lauren, it's not very often that I run into someone anymore now compared to say 10 years ago when I first got into the community, where almost everyone that I came across, I had to define CrossFit for them. What do you do? Well, I'm in the CrossFit community. Well, what is CrossFit? Do you ever run into anyone anymore that doesn't know what CrossFit is? And if you do, what is your kind of go-to description for that?
I feel like I run into people all the time who ask me what I do, and I'm like, I tell them I do CrossFit, and they don't really understand like what is CrossFit. And I think when I try to give them an all-around explanation of what CrossFit is, it's trying to be like the best possible person in fitness. So you're going to be training weightlifting, you're going to be training running, swimming, gymnastics. It's an all-around athlete, and you're building yourself in different areas. So trying to sprint faster or trying to go longer, like that's CrossFit. It's fitness, but it's functional.
Right.
Lauren, how did you get into CrossFit?
Got into CrossFit when I was 14 years old, so now I'm 26. But both of my older brothers, Ryan and Garrett, they found CrossFit. They found this guy, Vince Carter, and they came home one day and they were like, Lauren, we're training with this guy, Vince Carter. And at the time I was playing basketball, so I was like, Vince Carter, the basketball player? Yeah, I was like, Vince Carter, the basketball player? And they're like, yeah, Vince Carter, the basketball player. And like, I don't know why I was so naive and thought it was him. And so I went to the gym that day. I was like, that's not Vince Carter. But I went to the CrossFit gym that day, and I did my first session. I can't remember what the workout was, but it was like probably 10 different guys training at that time and one girl. So it was just me. And I like just immediately got hooked. I was always the girl with all the boys training at CrossFit. So that one session got me hooked, and I've been doing it since. So
and you said you were 14 years old. So 12 years ago, CrossFit was still, relatively unknown. You were 14 years old, getting pulled in by your older brothers. I mean, at 14 years old, what was the sticking point that made you say, okay, this is something that I want to do? There's no other girls in here. It's just me being pulled in by my brothers. Why was it interesting to you at that point, being a 14-year-old girl? Probably could be doing a million other things. Why was CrossFit the one that kind of stood out?
Well, I've been into fitness my whole life, and obviously growing up in a household of 3 older brothers, like sport was everything. So I had my first, people don't really know this, but I actually had my first personal trainer when I was 10 years old.
Wow.
And then I also used to do 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups with my dad, like every single day, probably back when I was like 7 years old or something like that. Like literally I had a little calendar, and if I did it for the day, I would check it off. And so I did that with my dad. So CrossFit was kind of an easy thing, like way of life for me, because I was doing some sort of strength and conditioning after school every day. I would find the men's fitness magazines, and I would do the workouts in there by myself in my dad's garage gym. So I was always working out from such a young age. So when I found CrossFit, I was like, wow, this is fun. I get to like compete in the gym every day.
Right up your alley, it seemed like. And plus, you grew up in Northern California, kind of the hotbed of where CrossFit started, being not that far from Santa Cruz, I'm assuming. Did you have any contact with kind of CrossFit headquarters or any of the guys kind of starting out those early gyms since you weren't that far away?
One of my other coaches at my gym, Gabe Subri, he was also a 3-time CrossFit Games athlete. So he was already kind of in that space. Like they were always talking about the open and regionals. And then my brother Garrett, he ended up going into San Jose State, and then he hooked up with Jason Kalipa. So then I kind of got in with that crew as well. So Garrett was training with Jason, and I was also training with Vince and Gabe. So just kind of that whole space is interconnected, and so that's kind of like how I found out about the CrossFit Games and everything.
Wow, that's such a fortunate place to be if you're into CrossFit. At that time, 10, 12 years ago, Northern California was kind of the end-all be-all when it came to CrossFit. So it seemed like you were in the right spot for getting your career going.
Yeah, right spot at the right time.
And, I mean, you mentioned your 3 brothers. You mentioned your dad seemed to be an athlete. You mentioned off air that even your mom comes from a little bit of an athletic background, a very athletic family. Having said all that and having your older brothers being able to kind of guide you a little bit and things like that, were there any things that when you jumped into some of the more aggressive CrossFit workouts or movements that are a little bit more advanced, was there anything that you really struggled with, anything that wasn't super easy for you or something that really took a long time to develop?
Snatch weightlifting, like that was one of the hardest movements getting into. I actually think snatch and clean and jerk, so the Olympic lifting movements, like those did not come easy for me. I remember I competed at the 2012 regionals, and the first barbell was 95 pounds for women, and you had to build up to 185 pounds, so you had one rep at every single barbell. I was so nervous I wasn't going to be able to snatch the 95-pound barbell, and I ended up thinking I snatched the 105-pound barbell, but that's like something that has constantly just been like a work in progress. And so I've been lucky enough to kind of have the right coaches at the right time who have helped me in my career. And I also train at the Olympic Training Center back in 2014 for like a week. So I was under the eyes of like some of the Olympic coaches there. And I worked with Kendrick Ferris a little bit. So just like all of like these like different guys helping me throughout my career has definitely helped with my Olympic lifting.
Can we give a little perspective to some people? So how long ago was that snatch ladder that you mentioned?
That was in 2012, so that was 8 years ago.
Okay, so 8 years ago, and you were able to get the 105?
Yeah, 105-pound snatch.
And Sid, I mean, it's laughable to you now, right? What's your PR at this point now?
183 pounds.
And weighing what at the time when you did 183?
Probably 60 kilos, so 132 pounds.
All right, so I just wanted to give some perspective to the listeners out there as to what your starting point was. 8 years of training, getting to the point now where you can snatch, well over body weight without too much issue, and something like 105 is fairly laughable. Just, it's always important to give people the appreciation for how long it takes to really be able to get good at what you consider to be your weakness. And maybe people don't even recognize now that you've competed for Team USA in Olympic weightlifting as well. It's turned into absolutely one of your strengths, which is incredible. I mean, that's such an incredible change.
I definitely think like competing with Team USA for the Junior Worlds and Junior Pan Ams, like having that background of weightlifting has definitely carried over to CrossFit, because whenever there's like a 1 rep max event or any sort of lifting, like I always have the confidence, like I only need like 3 lifts and I'm going to make whatever lift I need to make. And I know a lot of CrossFitters, they get so nervous about that event. It's just, you need to be confident. And I think like that background has carried over to my confidence with the barbell.
So that, I think to me, that's one of the things that has always been a big point that most people miss out in terms of what it takes to get to an elite level status as an athlete. It's the mental side, right? And what has allowed you to get to the point where you can look at that barbell in a competition and say, okay, I only need a couple lifts to be able to know that I can hit that? What has allowed you to go in and say, I have the mental ability to know with confidence, bordering, on to the point of just, a lot of elite athletes who succeed at a high level, their confidence borders on cockiness, and I found that to be helpful because you can achieve what you need to do in that setting. What have you done in your training that has allowed you to say, okay, no matter what happens in a competition setting, I know I have the confidence to be able to kind of do what I need to succeed here? Is there something that you feel like training has allowed you to do it, or something that you kind of mentally prepare for that allows you to do that? I'm just kind of curious what stands out as to what's allowed you mentally to get into that headspace.
I think experience for one, and also to just training. Like I snatch 2 times a week probably, but over the course of my 10 years, I've probably taken over 100,000 snatches. Who knows how many snatches, maybe 1 million. So it's just constantly drilling and practicing. And for me, before I approach any barbell, same thing with like baseball or going for a basketball free throw, you have the same routine before every single lift. So I know exactly, like I have a little routine, the way I touch the barbell, the way I approach the barbell, the way I walk up to it, what I'm thinking inside my head, the same thing every single time, like being confident in yourself, like believing like my legs are strong, I feel good, like just like these little cues that go on, and right before your lift, you're just like effortless. So I just think those little things that you do every single day in the gym carry over to something like a competition.
Love that. I used to call that a routine for the routine. Because in gymnastics, in the gymnastics world, we have routines, right? The routines that we do in our events. And I used to tell myself, what's my routine for my routine? What would I have to do to prep before I actually went on the apparatus? How do I chalk up? what
Yep.
visualization do I do? Where do I look? Who do I, all of these
Yeah.
little things in prep prior to actually doing the routine. It became all of a sequence that kind of allowed me to make sure that whatever the setting was, I was going to still be able to achieve what I wanted. So I
Hmm.
absolutely love hearing that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great story for sure. And self-talk. Self-talk is what you guys are describing there for sure. And for the listeners out there, if that's not something, I think we all do it naturally to an extent, but if it's not something that you're aware of that you're doing, then go ahead and think about it and start practicing it, experimenting with different versions, different variations of it, because a little bit of something different in that regard is going to work a little better for different people, in my opinion, for sure. Um, you talked about, uh, first of all, I was surprised to hear that weightlifting is what you struggle with the most, which at the same time is exciting to me because you're so good at it now. You mentioned that you worked with a lot of different coaches and athletes, and that's one of the things that helped you. And so, whether it's weightlifting or gymnastics or running or anything else at all in CrossFit, is there anything that you've learned through the years that sticks out as different than how you originally learned it? Um, and something that made enough sense for you to actually make the change from the way that you originally did it?
I think one thing that sticks out, I mean, is that like kind of more like a cue for lifting or training, or what
Yeah, I think
exactly?
I think I mean we can definitely go talk about any of those, but I think specifically in my mind, referring to a technique or a position or a specific way that you're moving or executing.
So one thing that definitely sticks out at the top of my head. So I worked with Amy Everett from Catalyst Athletics, and one cue that I constantly now tell myself that I never really thought about before, because people are always pull harder, keep the bar close, like pull faster, and rather thinking like keep driving my legs through the floor. So that's like one cue that has really helped me with Olympic lifting, rather than thinking about like the pulling aspect, because I'm sometimes I get a little forward on my toes a little too early. And so if I think about pushing through the ground a little bit longer, that has really stuck with me, and thinking like my legs are bombs and like they're about to explode. That's like Amy Everett. She's like, your legs are bombs, like stuff like that. That has definitely helped me. So that's been one of the like cues that has really stuck with me for lifting. That has kind of changed the way I approach the bar, rather than thinking about having a faster pull.
That's cool. That's definitely a good one to put out there for people that are listening in. Hopefully, maybe that can help someone that's listening and make sense to them. I know that specific cue is one that I don't feel will work for everyone, but will definitely work beautifully for some people. So give it a try, and obviously, if it works for Lauren Fisher, hey, go for it. Um, Within all these different disciplines as well, again, within CrossFit, we're talking about weightlifting, gymnastics, running, and so on and so on. Are there any specific standards that you can note that you think are important for athletes out there, or the listeners out there that are tuning in, uh, to change? Is it important for them to change from, I guess, what is more of the norm in CrossFit? So of all the CrossFit movements, and not necessarily what CrossFit HQ teaches, but I think we all fall into these certain standards that are very characteristic CrossFit is what I'm talking about. Are there
Mm-hmm.
anything that or is there anything that you picked up from these individual disciplines that you think is important for them to change?
I think it really depends on what your goals are, but I think if someone out there is listening, like maybe they want to qualify for a sanctional, or they want to qualify for the CrossFit Games, I think one of the biggest things is like learning to stick with one program. There's so many programs out there nowadays, and a lot of people think like, oh, I'm going to go do Invictus, or I'm going to do CompTrain, or I'm going to do this or that. Like sticking with one program, and following that religiously for like at least 6 weeks, and like giving it a try. And then also I think one of the biggest things that has helped me a bunch, like carry over to my conditioning within CrossFit, has been running. So I run twice a week at the track. So I do longer intervals one day, and then I do shorter intervals the second day of the week. So I think running has definitely like carried over to my conditioning, and maybe some people out there might want to consider following a track program if they're doing additional sessions a week.
So how much running were you doing before you specifically started adding these in? Was it just very, very much random, just kind of whenever it came up in the workout?
Um, yeah, so I usually only just ran inside of a workout, and I definitely noticed, I think it was in 2013, just my running was like lacking. And so that's when Garrett, my brother, was working with Chris Hinshaw, and Jason Kalipa and Neil Maddox were one of the first people to start working with Hinshaw. And so I reached out to Hinshaw and asked if he could start programming for me. And then that kind of changed my whole perspective on running. Like, just the way there's like a thought process behind every single running workout, it really carried over to how I'm going to feel within a CrossFit workout. So like how I'm breathing, like where I'm going to recover. And so learning from Hinshaw, like what I should do about my running, has been like a huge help.
Yeah, Henshaw's pretty much a genius, right? He's very,
Yeah.
very good, very smart. Can you give us just a couple of examples of some of those workouts that you're doing twice a week? You don't have to go into a huge amount of detail or anything, but just a couple quick examples.
So actually, I just got back from the track this morning, and I did 4 sets of a 1,000-meter run. I tried to hold 27 seconds per 100 meters. So I think that is about 145. That's about a 7-minute mile pace. Rest 60 seconds, and then I ran a 400 meters at the same pace, so 27 seconds per 100 meters. Rest 2 minutes, and it was a total of like 5,600 meters of running. So again, like following a running program and knowing like when I'm doing a track workout, I have specific paces to hold throughout the workout. So same thing with Olympic weightlifting. When you're going in and lifting, you're following percentages. Now for running, I'm following like different paces. And so another example workout could be like 10 sets of 200 meters, rest 60 seconds. Now I'm just throwing something out there, but those 200 meters might be faster. So maybe I'm running 40 seconds per 200. So that's 20 seconds per 100 meters, which is about a 5:20 or 5:30 mile pace, which is obviously a lot faster than the longer one I did this morning.
Yeah, I think Chris would agree with what I'm going to say here. What I got out of that is it's very important to pay attention to your pacing and do different variations of workouts where you're having to pace at a different rate. Just like what you said in weightlifting, we do different percentages for different reps. And for me, I give different amounts of rest in between sets and stuff like that as well. Now, all that running that you mentioned, though, Lauren, does not sound at all like a weightlifter. I know you've been training to go back to the CrossFit Games. Do you have any visions of going back to weightlifting competition?
I do. Like, I miss weightlifting. I just think it's so hard nowadays. Like, the sport has progressed so much where it's hard, where you can't do both CrossFit and weightlifting. Like, the numbers that the girls are putting up in weightlifting are outrageous now, and all they're doing is weightlifting. And then the girls that are competing in the CrossFit Games, all they're doing is training CrossFit. Like, they're not focusing on a weightlifting cycle alone for like 4 weeks. Like, you either need to pick one or the other now, and it's hard to do both. And I was lucky enough back then I could get away with it, but I just don't think anymore it's not possible. But I mean, down the road, I would love to get back into it. I think for now, like, my love is CrossFit, but who knows, maybe after this next Olympics, kind of reevaluating my goals, if I would like to maybe try and figure out for 2024 what I want to do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're 26 years old, so you still have a good number of years to be able to do some damage there, I would say.
Thank you. I know people always say that females peak later in their life, so around, I think, 30 to 32, maybe I'm getting that wrong, is like peak age for women, especially in lifting. So I'm still on my way up.
That's right.
Lauren, you were mentioning the importance of sticking with one program for a while and giving it a chance to kind of see how it kind of reacts to you as an athlete. Who's programming for you right now? You mentioned Chris on the endurance side. I don't know if he's still your endurance coach, but who's doing your gymnastics? Who's doing your CrossFit basic training? Do you have different coaches for those different areas, or do you have someone that kind of oversees all of your training?
So currently, right now, I just have one person, just because I found it to be a little bit easier. I still kind of take some of my old Hinshaw workouts and recycle them for running. But Tino Marini, he's CJ Martin's right-handed man at CrossFit Invictus. So he does all my coaching. He's there every single day at the gym. So I train from 9 to 11 and then 1 to 3, Monday to Wednesday, and then Friday, Saturday. So he's there every single day watching me, and he knows exactly what I need to do, like to get ready for my competition. And so that's helpful when you have a coach that's actually there rather than someone who's like remotely coaching you. Like, I love that, but I also like having someone there who's just there watching you every single day. I mean, I'm so experienced now where I wouldn't need a coach to be there every single day to watch me, but it is nice sometimes to like have someone to push you when you don't feel like going as hard as you want to in a workout.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes the world a difference, being able to have that luxury of, you mentioned off air where that you live just a few blocks away from CrossFit Invictus, right? You're able to walk to the gym. It's something that's right down the block. It makes your whole life easier if you can not only get to the accessibility of it, but then having a coach there every day to be able to, who knows you, and this kind of what it sounds like is happening, where he knows you as an athlete, to know when to push, when to back off, when to give you a little bit more, and those kind of things you can't do remotely. You know what I mean? If you're remote with an athlete, you give them the plan, you hope that they do it, you get some feedback, maybe you get a video here and there in terms of how they're moving. But when you're there day in and day out, being able to kind of make necessary changes as the person is going through a workout, I mean, I think that changes completely what you're able to get out of that athlete. So I think you have a huge advantage, the fact that you're with your coach on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you walk into the gym and just be like, man, my legs are so sore from yesterday. They're so trashed. And like what's on my program might be a lot of legs that day. And then I asked if maybe I could get a different program. And so he writes something down on the board, which is, I think, one of the best advantages of having a coach that's there who can adjust
feedback,
your program on the fly.
Feedback, immediate feedback, and being able to make those changes as needed. My coach, when I was living at the Olympic Training Center, I always said could read my mind. He just knew I would walk in, and even without me like saying my legs hurt, he'd be like, okay, Dave, you're not doing this today, you're doing this instead. And I'd be like, oh my God, that's what I hope he was going to say. Like, he just knew, because we had such a good connection in terms of having worked together for so long, that it allowed me to really kind of maximize each day in the gym. And I think most people don't recognize the value. That's why searching for someone that knows you as an athlete and can really kind of maximize your potential in the gym every day just goes such a long way. Mm-hmm. Have you had any injuries, setbacks, anything that really kind of took you out of training over the course of this past decade plus that you've been involved with the sport? Anything that is fairly notable other than your blob injuries?
I think that's one another misconceptions about CrossFit Games athletes is like, oh, they're robots, they never get injured. But man, I've had my fair share of injuries, and there are days when I just feel like every ache and pain in my body. But that's why I like prioritizing mobility and stretching and everything is so important. But in 2016, right after the CrossFit Games, I mean, that whole time leading up to the 2016 CrossFit Games, I knew something was wrong with my ankle. I couldn't run or jump without pain. And so I was just struggling to get through that CrossFit Games. And then right after that Games, I got an MRI and found out I had a 2-centimeter tear in my peroneal brevis tendon. And I also had a piece of like my bone clipped off. It's called like osteochondral lesion. And so basically the only thing to fix that was surgery. And so I got a surgery in 2016, and I was out for 5 months from any running, squatting, or jumping. So all I could train was upper body and my core.
Handstand.
Lots of handstand works, lots of gymnastics like V-ups and hollow holds and all of that.
Dave,
sounds like a great 5 months.
Yeah, so that was mentally really hard for me, but it also made me train things I would never do if I hadn't gotten injured. So I got really strong at my upper body, really strong in my core. I was doing like rowing on one leg, just things that were different, but you're still getting training in, and you're just mentally like, it's mentally hard when you have an injury, but it also makes you appreciate when you aren't injured. So that was a hard time, and I ended up coming back from that surgery and qualifying for the 2017 CrossFit Games. So that was an emotional year.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that point that you're making about, working on those areas of weakness during an injury, I always looked at injuries and opportunities. And was that something that you found to be innate in the way that you train? Say, okay, I'm hurt. I'm going to be taking off these next 5 months. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to get better in these areas? Or is there a coach there to be able to say, hey, let's focus on these areas, and I know you're going to be upset. I know it's something we're going to take the season off. Or is it just who you are as an athlete where you're able to say, okay, no matter what's going on, I'm able to make the best out of the situation. Even if I am injured, I'm still going to become better because of it.
I think it's who I am as an athlete and a person. It's definitely ingrained in me from my dad. He had this personality where he never wanted to give up in anything in life. And so I'm the same way as my dad. Just because I have an injury doesn't mean I'm going to give up. It's just, like you said, it's an opportunity to get better. And so I don't love when I get injured, but I love any opportunity that I have to get better.
So with regards to upcoming training seasons and things like that, you said, you have West Coast Classic coming up, and you have some other individual and team competitions coming up. One, how's the training going for that? But then two, what are the goals with that? I mean, I know it seems like you want to get back to the CrossFit Games, but what are your goals? Is it just to compete at the CrossFit Games? Do you want to end up on the podium? Do you want to win that gold? What are your athletic aspirations at this point, having already done so much in the CrossFit world? 26 years old, what do you still have to prove, and kind of what are those goals?
Well, this past year I was on Team Invictus, and we took 3rd place at the CrossFit Games. So my goal now is to do better. I want to win the CrossFit Games on my team. So literally every single person on our team wants to win. We want to do better than last year. And so we still need to qualify for the CrossFit Games, which is why we're going to Mid-Atlantic and Washington, D.C. in April. So that's our competition where we want to qualify. And then we'll go to Rogue Invitational in May as a tune-up before the games. If we qualify it, then we'll have to figure out something else out. And then go to the CrossFit Games. But, yeah, I want to stand on that podium again. There's nothing better than that feeling.
And then you still have some aspirations as an individual as well? Or is that kind of just part of the training for your team?
So I kind of had this goal plan for my season. We were supposed to qualify in Argentina, but things didn't work out. That was in December. We took 2nd at the competition. And then I always had this intention to go to West Coast Classic as an individual. Just one, I haven't done an individual competition in a long time. And second, it's right in my home territory. I'm from San Diego. I competed in the Del Mar Fairgrounds for 3 years. And so for me, that gets me super excited. It'll feel like the old regionals. So I'm super excited to be competing as an individual, but I don't know, we'll see how I do. But my goal and my intent has been with the team.
Who is on that team? Is it the same full team intact from last year?
It's same team, except one guy is different just because Tommy Venus, he got into the Fire Academy, so he doesn't have time to train full-time for CrossFit. So our new guy, Eric Carmody, he's a 2-time CrossFit Games athlete. He's been training at Invictus for a while, so he's on our team now instead of Tommy.
Okay, and who are the others?
Rasmus and then Reagan Huckabee. Yep.
Does Reagan train with you guys regularly, or is she remote?
So Reagan is remote. She trains at CrossFit Fort Vancouver in Washington, but she's been an Invictus athlete for a long time. We've been really good friends for 5 years, and so she balances me out in terms of my strengths and weaknesses. Reagan is so strong. She's mom of 2 kids, just mom strong. But so she's definitely balances me out because I'm strong, but I'm not as strong as her. So it's great, whenever there's a barbell or anything, because I'm Reagan, you take the barbell. And then I'm really good at gymnastics and running, and then she's really strong on the machine. So we balance each other out really well. And then Rasmus and Eric are just 2 big powerhouses. They are big guys, but they're strong on the worm and just good for events at the CrossFit Games when you're pushing the big bob and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember Rasmus at last camp. He wasn't, I wouldn't say he was training for anything specific at that point. He was just there, have fun and hang out.
Yeah.
But we had a competition at the end of the week on that Friday, and there was an assault bike portion of the workout, whatever it was. And you had to do 15 calories on the bike. And that was your portion, and everybody on your team had to select one athlete to do that. So his team selected Rasmus to get on the bike. I thought the bike was going to explode. I thought the bike was, he sat on it. He did 15 calories in 3.5 seconds. And I thought the actual screws were going to burst out from the bike because it was moving in ways that I had never heard it before. The dude is just a monster. Like, I
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. I was like, there was like noises coming from the assault bike that I'd never heard before. It was like a completely different thing. I was like, okay, this is a new thing for me to hear and see. I was like, this guy clearly has some power behind him.
Yeah, I think he's actually broken a assault bike in his past, maybe even 2.
Yeah, I have no
Nice.
doubt. I have no doubt.
That's
I'm pretty sure he
Yeah.
broke the one at camp too.
Yeah, he seems like an incredibly nice guy. Probably just a big teddy bear. You can confirm or deny that, Lauren.
Yeah.
But I'd certainly hate to see him mad. That's for sure.
Yeah, you don't want to see him mad, but he's definitely one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Yeah. I mean, I have to say that he's also my future husband. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't see you not being with a nice guy. So, and here's the thing: I'm sure Lauren, you can still take him, whether he's a big, powerful man or not. I'm sure he's probably scared of you, more scared of you than you are of him. That's for sure.
I mean, we're so competitive in the gym. Like, I always want to beat him in workouts, and he wants to beat me.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a good relationship, but it's definitely hard. But it's fun.
For sure. Yeah, talking about the team, I'm looking forward to watching you guys for sure. Is there anything that you can pinpoint or that you guys were able to pinpoint as a team from last year that kept you from that top spot that you guys are working on now?
So one of the biggest things, I mean, it's so hard. Like, you can never really take it back, and it really depends, like, when you're in the moment and who your judge is and everything. And the very first event at the CrossFit Games, our synchronized toes to bar, like, we just could not get that figured out for some reason. I feel like we did 30 to 40 extra toes to bar in that event, and so we took second to last place, and that was the very first event. So that kind of screwed us for the rest of the weekend. So that's like one of the biggest things, is getting better at synchronized movements, and also being a little bit more strict on ourselves within training. So making sure like we're giving ourselves the no reps when we need to be given the no reps. And then also too, I mean, we took pretty much last place in that sprint event, but there's nothing you really can do about that, except like Rasmus is such a big guy. I think Reagan had a hamstring injury. So there's just things you can't control that happen. You only get 4 days or 3 days to be your very best. So you want to make sure you're firing on all cylinders. And we had a few injuries going into that competition. So I think just improving on last year, being more as a team unit, so getting better at the synchronized stuff, and also improving on the worm as well.
Awesome. Yeah, well, like I said, we certainly look forward to watching you guys do that. And switching gears a little bit here, we've talked a lot about, you know, that you still have a lot of passion for training and competing. Obviously, it's what you spend a whole lot of time doing. What else are you passionate about? And, you know, a few things maybe that are on the top of your list, and are you able to give any amount of time to those right now?
So right now, one of the things that takes up majority of my time is my business, Grown Strong. It's about inspiring women to live and breathe their passions and to be strong and confident in all aspects of their life. So not just like physically strong inside of a gym, but mentally and emotionally. Like, I feel like growing up, I dealt with a lot of obstacles in my life. Like, people used to always make fun of me for being like the muscular girl, like in high school, like doing CrossFit. And it was really hard. Like, no one really understood why I was doing what I was doing. And so with Grown Strong, now I'm trying to inspire women to also be okay with being strong. Like, it's okay to have muscles. It's okay to lift weights. And so I have my own online fitness program for women. And so it's not for elite athletes. So if you're like looking to qualify for the CrossFit Games or anything, it's not for you, but it's for the everyday woman. So it's for moms with 3 kids or someone with a busy lifestyle. Like, you have the flexibility to choose between 3 different programs based off your time and equipment. And we also have a very strong community of women, I think, inside our Facebook group, where people are encouraging and supporting each other on their goals to be better in fitness for life. So that's what I'm super passionate about right now.
Yeah, hey, hats off to you for putting that together. I've noticed on social media that you've been putting out a lot of good demo videos and recommendations, and I know that your followers are getting a lot out of that and taking a look at your website. It's a beautiful website. Whoever put that together did a good job, and hopefully people will go check that out. You also have a blog on there. I noticed you have a couple articles. Is that something that that you write yourself, or do you have some of your team that does that?
So I write a few of the articles. We just launched the blog, so I think there's maybe about 3 of them on there now, but we also have a copywriter who helps us write the articles, and then I write a few of them myself. And so basically I try to ask a lot of my following, like, what pinpoints or struggles are you guys dealing with? And like, that's kind of, and then I have like a whole spreadsheet of all these questions that people, like common questions people ask me all the time. And so we really want that to be like a main site for women who want to know about like recipes, how to build muscle, like how to balance life, like just kind of covering like any aspects of their life. And so we just launched that. And so it'll grow, like hopefully to be like women's health, something like that along the lines.
Oh, that's cool. Now, the writing part of it, that specific part of it, is that something that you enjoy or something that you feel like you just kind of have to do to be able to get content out there?
Gosh, writing content is one of the biggest things I struggle with and takes the most time. Like, I'm definitely not the best writer, but I do it every single day. Like, for my own social media, I'm writing all of my posts, and that, like, you're always constantly figuring out, like, what am I gonna like write about today, or planning content out ahead of. So I usually try to plan out my content a month ahead of time, and then I kind of write out like, hey, I want to focus this week maybe on how to be better at your front squats, or maybe this week I want to focus on something mobility related, and then just writing captions based off that. So it's definitely not one of my strongest suits, but it's something I have to do in order to constantly put content out there. And I mean, I love it, but man, social media is like a full-time job outside of training and running a business. And so, yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's definitely something to help inspire someone out there who maybe needs to know like just a little bit of information.
Yeah, that social media is kind of a necessary evil, right? Like you have to do it to be able to connect with your fans and to be able to kind of make sure that you're staying relevant. And it's not the easiest thing, and you're right, it can be a full-time job if you're doing it well, especially. Between all your training, Lauren, between running your business, between that and also you mentioned planning for your wedding, it's a pretty packed schedule. But is there anything else that you have going on right now that you would want our listeners to kind of know about you specifically? Anything you have coming up that you want to make sure that we get out there to people listening to this?
I mean, go check out my website, crownstrong.com. So we have our fitness program on there, but we also have apparel. And then also, too, if you're in San Diego area, I'm going to be competing in West Coast Classic in March, so come out and support. And then I guess just kind of follow along me at Lauren Fisher, at Grown Strong. Like sometimes we do meetups in San Diego, free meetups, where we do like an hour workout in San Diego. So, yeah, just follow along. There's a busy schedule, but it's fun.
Awesome. And what's going on with the wedding? What's the plan for that? How much of a priority is that taking in your life right now? Or is it kind of like competition first, Rasmus understands, and then wedding second?
Right now it's training, so it's usually like training work, and then like I'll probably spend like 30 minutes or an hour like on the wedding. Hopefully there'll be a time when you don't have to plan anymore for the wedding. You can just relax and get ready for it. But who knows? But that's September 3rd, 2020 in Santorini, Greece. So we're doing a destination wedding.
Amazing.
Wow.
Not a bad spot to be, that's for sure.
No.
Yeah, it'll be perfect timing right after the CrossFit Games.
Excellent. All right, Lauren, it's coming down to some question time for you. Some rapid fire, some fun little questions. This first one here is something that we like to throw out to all of our guests, and we keep a running tally of how the answers come at us. So, very simple. Which sport or discipline is better, gymnastics or weightlifting?
Oh, that's
No
hard.
pressure.
Yeah, I think I know the answer from Lauren. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to go my way. But
I hope I know the answer.
Weightlifting.
Oh, see, we didn't even have to say anything.
I know.
else.
There was no
came out with it.
pressuring, no bribing for this one. It was straight up. I get shot down.
I do appreciate that, Lauren. That gives me maybe, 3, and I think one of them I kind of stole. I think I kind of forced Henshaw into saying weightlifting.
Really?
But yeah, I'm still way behind, so I appreciate the win there on that one. But why is that? We talked a lot about weightlifting in the recording here. Is it because you did struggle with it so much and you came out really good on the other end?
I think I think weightlifting is one of those things that you're constantly have to work day in and day out, no matter how long you've been doing it. And I think getting under a barbell every single day is just mentally tough. Like, I think days where I get to go on the handstand obstacle course or doing like handstand work, it doesn't, for me, I enjoy that. But weightlifting, man, that requires but they both require mental capacity. So I don't know.
I think gymnastics, like you said, is just easier for you, right? It's just, it's not something that you have to stay on top of.
Yeah, gymnastics has come a little bit easier for me than weightlifting, which is actually kind of funny because you would think that weightlifting is something that comes naturally to me, but it's definitely something I've had to drill a lot of hours in.
Well, all right, I think I'm just gonna ask Rasmus then. I'm pretty sure he's gonna say gymnastics. I'll take the gymnastics from Rasmus.
Yeah, I actually think he'd probably say gymnastics.
Really? Oh my god!
Okay,
yeah, I think he would.
Let's not have him on then. How about that? Let's just keep him up here.
Wow, with his weightlifting, I thought for sure he would say weightlifting. But all right.
Well, I'm really glad that we dug into weightlifting into the extent that we did, because I think it's very inspiring for people to hear that you did struggle with it so much, and you do still have to think about it and work on it on a regular basis to move the way that you do. So very cool. Now, getting into a few final questions here, we're going to do rapid fire questions. And what that means is that you have no more than a minute to answer. So you just kind of go with what comes off the top of your head. And another rule is that you can pass one time to Dave, and Dave has to answer if you do not. But if you do pass, then that adds another question. We'll do 3 questions for you total. Does that sound good?
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Easy one to start off with. Are you a morning or a night person?
Morning.
Why is that?
I love getting ahead of my day rather than being behind on the day. Like, if I'm the person who's getting up late at 9 p.m., I feel like I missed 2 hours of my day when I could have gotten so much done. So I like to stay ahead of the day rather than behind. And I feel like at night too, I just get so tired and I can't get any work done. Like when it's dark out, and I'd rather just be waking up to the sun, having my breakfast, tea, all of that.
Have you always been naturally early to bed and early to rise, or is that something you had to kind of train into yourself?
Definitely train into myself. When I was just in high school and college, obviously you have to get up because you have classes and stuff, but during the weekends I'd like to sleep in. I never really wanted to go to bed late. I just slept longer, but now I like to get up a little bit early and a little less sleep, but it's worth it.
Yep, absolutely agreed. It's tough for me. I'm naturally a night person, and Dave, I think you said you were too at one point, so definitely something I got.
Baby came around.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next one. What is one thing that annoys you the most?
One thing that annoys me the most.
And if it has to do with Rasmus, go ahead and spit it out. It'll be all right.
One thing that annoys me the most, I guess. Well, so Rasmus and I are both clean, but Rasmus is literally so clean. I've never met someone that is as clean as Rasmus. So if I put one shaker bottle or something out of place, he gets so mad. Can't you just put the shaker bottle in the right place, or can't you put the scissors back in the right place? And I'm trying my best. So that just, I wish maybe he'd take down the clean level just a little bit. We're already so clean. So that's one of the things that annoys me.
That's hilarious. I so thought you were going to say he was messy. I was so prepared for that answer, and you caught me completely off guard.
Rasmus is just complete. We don't know him at all. Loving gymnastics.
Yeah,
super clean.
I feel like you guys need to have him on the podcast.
Yeah, that's right. We got to get to know the real Rasmus, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna contact him beforehand and try to urge him to pick weightlifting secretly.
Yeah.
I need some more wins here. All right, last one, unless you choose to pass here, and I think maybe you will, but I hope you don't.
Don't pass.
What is one of your weird quirks?
One of my weird quirks. Okay, so I hate going to bed with dirty feet. So, even if I've showered, maybe 2 hours before, I have to go and, wash my feet before I go into my bed. So, that's definitely one of my weird quirks. But I still want to hear, Dave, what one of his is.
Oh, no.
She's calling you out.
You
have to.
You answered it. I have a million, but I can't think of any right now. I don't know. I'm a weird dude, to be honest with you, just weird in general. But I have to kind of think of one that's worthy of it.
I can maybe throw one out there, Dave. You
Please.
very regularly wear an apron.
Oh, yes, I do.
Really?
Well, because I cook a lot. Yeah. Yeah, I don't just wear
Oh,
aprons around the
wow.
house.
I was hoping you'd leave that off because I was wanting
Yeah.
the listeners to think that you just walk around with an apron.
Right, yeah, just an apron, no other clothes on, just wear an apron. That's how I cook. No, that's definitely not it. But yeah, I do like to cook, but that definitely is not quirky. I like comics a lot. Is that quirky? I collected
I
a
didn't.
ton of comics when I was a kid, and I'm still very much into comics. And so it just keeps me reminding myself of all the fun times I had when I was a kid. Love my comics.
I don't know. We'll leave it up to Lauren if she's going to accept that or not.
To be honest,
I'll-
I have no
I'll
problem
ex-
with saying something quirky. I just can't think of anything right now.
I think comics are a little quirky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really know anyone that likes comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know. There's comic movies now. That's what everybody's doing, but yeah.
Well, what is your favorite comic, Dave?
Growing up, I really liked I liked X-Men a ton, and I liked Daredevil because Daredevil was kind of like a gymnast. He lived in New York, close by to where I grew up, and he was an acrobat. And I was like, and he's got DD, and his initials were basically my name. So I was like, Daredevil's badass. He's awesome. He's a gymnast, and he's got my initials. So he's like, that's my guy.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't one of the questions, Lauren, but do you read? Do you like reading books?
I do like reading, but man, I feel like I've been so busy with everything that I haven't been prioritizing reading as much as I used to. Recently, though, I was reading The Japanese Way of Life. It's like a book about Japanese people and how they live to be like some people live to over 100 years old, and it's just crazy, and just like the way they live their life. And so actually it's called Japanese Way to Happiness. But yeah,
Nice.
It's basically describing their life. So that's one of the books that I was recently reading. But yeah, I set a New Year's goal to start reading 10 pages a night, and I've actually haven't been able to stick with that. So
Oh, man.
just letting everyone know I fall off my resolutions too.
Yeah, absolutely. Reading is tough for me as well. I do enjoy it when I do it, but I have to kind of set goals for myself, even like read at least 10 minutes a day, and I try to stick with that for sure because I think it's very important, to keep growing as a person and learning new things and reading different things as well. So I'm glad that you mentioned that book, and we'll definitely take that as a recommendation. Lauren, thank you so much for being on it. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. For the listeners out there, guys, be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, also at Dave Durante and at Ollie Chad. We'd love to hear from you as well. You can always leave us a rating or review wherever you're getting your podcast, or contact us with any questions or requests you have for the show by sending an email to podcast@powermonkeyfitness.com. And I will say we've released, 4 recordings up to this point, Dave, and we have not received an email yet. We want to hear from you guys. We want to know what you want to hear about, who you want us to have on, and any questions that you have. We'd love to make an entire episode dedicated to answering 1 or 2 questions from you guys. But on behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. And until next time, guys, thank you very much for listening.